Welcome, viewers. Once again, we are back with one more episode of Celeb Talk 1.0. And as usual, positive mental attitude wants to spread the spirit of positivity, wellness, and good wishes. So we are back today with a holy monk, a person who is of the greatest wisdom. He is from the Ramakrishna Order. Pranam Swamiji. Welcome to our show.
Namaste.
So today we have got an opportunity with none other than Swami Narasimhananda Ji. After a long wait, we have been always waiting for Swamiji, and we are so thankful today to Swamiji that he has found some time for us, for our viewers, to share his wisdom. And we would try to get the best out of this nuggets of wisdom, how it can influence a common man in his daily life. Our today's topic is how Vedanta is going to influence the leadership and how a common man can get the benefits of this Vedantic learning. So today, I would just give a small introduction of Swamiji and then we'll get into his topic today. So Swamiji has been associated with so many good work. He has been the former editor of Prabuddha Bharat. He is the secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Kozhikode. Apart from that, he is also a renowned corporate speaker, motivator, and also an influencer in different NGO and corporate society. Along with that, he has also spent some time as a part-time lecturer faculty in Jadavpur University. And there are so many accolades which always adds with Swami Narasimhananda Ji. So I once again give my welcome and best wishes to Swami Narasimhananda Ji, and I welcome Swamiji for this holy talk on how Vedanta is going to influence the leadership in the common man's life. Today, in a time when people are getting themselves Western educated and we are all trying to flow ourselves in the race of competition, advancement, the question really comes, are we really getting advanced? Are we really getting modernized? If so, then why still we have so much of misery, so much of discomfort, so much of frustration? What is exactly the solution? So all these things we are going to get to know from this particular podcast. And I will tell my audience today to listen carefully to all the learnings of this ancient information of Vedanta. So without much ado, I would request today's honorable speaker, Swami Narasimhananda Ji, to take the floor with his holy chanting, and after that he can start with his lecture today.
Oh. Thank you, Premankur Ji, and I'm very happy to be here, and I'm thankful to you for having given me this opportunity to share my ideas on Vedanta, particularly Advaita Vedanta and leadership today. Advaita Vedanta is the teachings of Vedas about non-difference of things in the universe and beyond. And it's because we seek or we see difference. Most of the times we want to see difference. That's why I use the word seek. That we have unhappiness. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is said, Dvitiyat vai bhayam bhavati. That means fear is caused by the perception of the other. The moment I see someone different from me, the moment I see someone who is either above me or below me in terms of learning, in terms of wealth, in terms of power, I am afraid. I'm afraid because I feel challenged by that other. And it could be an animal, it could be a reptile. As we know, most snakes don't bite unless they are afraid. So it's the case with most animals that they attack only to protect themselves. And this goes with all the human emotions that we experience. It's because we see someone different from us or something different from us that we are afraid, that we get angry, that we feel love or hatred, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Advaita Vedanta teaches us to perceive essential unity of things, essential unity of the entire universe, and also beyond. I use this word beyond because we don't know many things of this universe. It's probably impossible to know the entire universe at any one point in time. Advaita Vedanta says that basically everything is one, and it is because of misreading of that truth that you are seeing differences. And if you see differences, it will only cause you sorrow. And the way to go beyond sorrow, complete cessation of sorrow or suffering, which in Sanskrit is called Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti, that means complete freedom from suffering, is to find the unity, to perceive this unity. How does it help in leadership? In leadership, it helps because we all know that gone are the days when we used to see a leader as someone who is on the top, having probably a scepter or something, trying to rule down. That very approach has been rubbished, it has been trashed for some time now. And Swami Vivekananda, through his own life, had shown what is nowadays the buzzword in leadership circles, and that is servant leadership. So what is servant leadership? When you put yourself not just as one among the team, not above them, but one equal among them, but when you consider yourself to be someone who is at the beck and call of all the team members, ready to serve the team. Instead of a person who is being served by the team, you become a person who is ready to serve the team. Instead of a person who seeks reports or demands reports from the team members, you become a person who is reporting to the team at large. So that is servant leadership, and that comes when you see no difference between your team members and yourself. And not only that, you see no difference between the goals of your team members, between the aims of your team members and your own aim. So there is complete alignment of your purpose and your passion and your endeavor, the effort which you put with the rest of the team. Only when you do that, you become a true leader. As Swami Vivekananda would say, leader is called Sardar in Hindi. He used to say that only a Shirdar can become a Sardar. That means only a person who is ready to sacrifice oneself for the sake of the team can become a true leader. All this becomes possible when you have this philosophical or living standpoint. In India, we don't talk about, or in the traditional Indian wisdom, we don't talk about just philosophy, as opposed to Western thought, where philosophy, famously by Western philosophers themselves, is an armchair exercise. You don't need to actually live what you talk about. So the precept and practice might be quite different according to the Western thought. Whereas in India, we call Indian philosophy, not just philosophy. Philosophy literally means love of knowledge. Here it is not just love of knowledge, it's darshana. It is something which you see for yourself. It's an inquiry. Anvishiki it's called, inquiry or darshana, where you actually live what you preach. And so that makes the whole difference. And of this, arguably we can say the epitome or the zenith of this darshana is Advaita Vedanta, where you don't see any difference between things or living beings and yourself, where you don't see any difference between the supreme truth and yourself. So you are the supreme, not in the sense that you are the body and that body is supreme, but what drives this body mind complex, that is supreme, and that supreme dwells in everything that is perceived by us. When you come to terms with this idea, when you really understand this idea, then there is no ground actually to differentiate, distinguish between people who supposedly are supposed to report to you, so-called subordinates, or between drivers or chauffeurs, between people who wait upon you on restaurants or attendants, who because of their profession have to do that. But essentially you know that all of them are same. Even your pet which you are petting, and sometimes you feel very bad for a pet more than you feel bad for fellow human beings. Even that pet is having the same essential divinity, essential truth, and it's a different expression of that truth. And so for ordinary people, people who are into day-to-day activities, it could be as mundane as maybe cleaning, taking care of the sanitation of a place, or maybe selling something to get to make 2 meals a day. It could be anything as small as that. But if that person understands that Advaita Vedanta speaks of that divinity which is there in even innate objects. So according to Advaita Vedanta, even a wall is divine. Only the expression is different, but essentially it is of the same divine truth which makes a human being. When you understand this, then basically in your life there can be no kind of distinction, no kind of exploitation, because exploitation comes because of distinction, no kind of manipulation. There will be no fear. You will not be challenged by someone else or something else. You will not hate anything. You will also not love something specifically. That means there will be no attachment. And so that gives up, that opens up a different whole world to you, where whatever you do is not just something which will give you freedom, but it is something which you enjoy. Now that's another thing which leadership circles today talk about much, that whether you and your team members are enjoying what you do. One thing is productivity, but we know that many a times people are productive, but they are not happy about that. And also the team leader is also not happy about it. So productivity, a certain percentage of production gives rise to an expectation of more production. And the circle goes on like that. It's a vicious circle.
So Swamiji, here one thing I want to understand. You very beautifully explained Vedanta for the modern people and for the common day normal people. So in one way, we understand that it emphasizes the ancient age-old wisdom, which is actually concept of self-realization. So in the context of leadership, how will you help the people and how they can translate this self-awareness or the self-management in their daily life? So that will be my question, sir.
That's what I'm talking about. So here, it's instead of talking about self-realization, it's better if we see other people or the universe as such. Even say my laptop or my desktop, I'm not just talking about living beings, but also things in general, as something that is mirroring my own truth. So if I'm talking to Premankur Das, he is sitting in a different country, in a different time zone. Probably he has a different set of values, or he is coming from a different background, which is different from my background, which would be different from the backgrounds of so many people who might be listening to this. But essentially, these are nothing but different expressions of the same divinity. And we don't need to be frightened by words like self-realization, Brahman, etc. It's all same. So if I were to give you an analogy from physics, we know that the smallest particle till now inferred, nobody has seen it, is the Higgs boson particle, also called the God particle. Now everything in this universe is made up of that. And that's a scientific truth till now. Of course, it keeps on changing. So that's the scientific truth. Now, if you approach this idea of Advaita Vedanta from a physicist's point of view, then you will come to immediately to this decision that yes, there is nothing in this world, in this universe, or there cannot be anything in this world, logically speaking, that is from the physics point of view, which is not having the God particle. And I'm not going into the discussion why physicists, most of whom are professed atheists, call this God particle. Because it's like overarching, it's like omnipotent or omniscient, something which breaks all barriers. So instead of thinking of Advaita Vedanta as a spiritual discipline which one has to undertake to realize something, giving it all those fancy words, I would rather that Advaita Vedanta is just perceiving the oneness of things.
In the modern day, when we see in the corporate boardrooms, most of the leaders are facing tough decision making. And in the Battle of Kurukshetra, we have also seen how Arjuna faced a very difficult and critical situation to take a decision. So how the modern people can relate to these learnings which once was given in the battlefield of Kurukshetra? And I feel in the same way, if I look at the present corporate scenario, many times the business leaders, the HR leaders, they're having some tough situations. And how exactly those learnings can be followed and it can be imbibed in our life.
There are two insights from the Bhagavad Gita, from the words of Sri Krishna, that come to my mind, which are quite pertinent to your question. And they are, the first one is, it's the idea called Swadharma. What is Swadharma? Swadharma is not something that is imposed upon you. Swadharma is something which you chose as your duty. So a leader chooses this, that yes, I will take this responsibility, I will deliver. And mostly we find, and it is ironical, but you take any leadership coaching book or you take the advice of any leadership coach, you find that most of the time it is difficult to talk to a leader, because the leader somehow has a huge, humongous ego. Maybe because of her or his talents, maybe because of her or his experience. But as in Samskrita we say, Vidya dadati vinayam. If you really have experience and knowledge, it should humble you. But we find, and it is quite often than not, more often than not, that leaders come with a huge share of ego. And it becomes difficult even to communicate to them. So a leader who appoints a leadership coach, that leadership coach finds it difficult to communicate the problems for which he was appointed, basically.
Absolutely.
So that you would be more experienced in this, because you're dealing probably at a bigger level with this. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that it is better to not adequately perform what you profess to perform than to very well perform what is not your call, what is not your brief, as we say. So if you said that you will fight the war, then it is your duty to fight the war. Maybe you might not be able to do it very well, you may end up dead there, instead of giving some kind of sermon which is not what you agreed for, which is not what you signed for. So that thing I find, in my experience, lacking in leadership today. They don't profess, they profess something, but they don't do it. They don't practice what they preach. So one has to, and in the Bhagavad Gita, again, connectedly, I told you two insights. The other insight is, whatever the best person does, other people follow that.
Right.
So if you are a leader, obviously for various reasons, some under your control, you have become a person who is looked up to. If you are the person who is looked up to, then it becomes your duty to deliver, not just deliver. Then you are not just another employee. You have to also create some kind of an ambition, some kind of an ideal, some kind of a goal for the other people. Like they see you as their target, not in the sense of shooting target, but something which you can achieve. So if you have to do that, that means you have to lead by example. I know these things have been told many times, probably they have become cliches, but sometimes cliches like I love you, they don't die basically. So it is a truth. It is a truth. So here today, in the most competitive, as you rightly said, competitive and disruptive scenario in business and otherwise also, we find that leaders are not delivering. They are not delivering on their promises. And that is true for all fields. And similarly, they are not setting up good examples. They are not leading by examples. When that happens, it's also true in parenting. When that happens, then what does happen? The team members will try to seek better examples. And that probably is one of the reasons why there is so much turnover, employee turnover, team member turnover. And in among children, they go to other people who are not their parents, and so they don't have so much of commitment towards these children, and they go and they tell their most personal private things to them. And that's why we see great rise in cyber crimes, because then they manipulate them, blackmail them, etc. Why does that happen? Because this child thinks that the parent is not sufficient, or the parent is not properly trained or prepared to handle this problem. And that's the same. See, this leader, team member and team leader, they also have a kind of parent-child relationship in a more mature way. So if one has to become a good leader, A, that person has to follow the swadharma. That means that person has to deliver on their promises. And B, has to set up an example which others can follow. Has to be really that person who can be looked up to. And unfortunately, today we are not going on that path. And we have to mend that path. Otherwise, this person might be looking up to an intelligence system or an AI system. Because it might have more things to show as something, as goal, and it might actually deliver on its promises.
So, Swamiji, if you can also say a little bit, we are just coming to the conclusion of this program. So before we finish, I would request if you can say a little bit about Karma Yoga, which is also an important aspect of Vedanta. In brief, if you can give some knowledge on that, how we can follow that.
Yeah, Karma Yoga, most people have misunderstood it as doing work. Karma Yoga is not just doing work. If Karma Yoga were just doing work, all donkeys would become, knowers of Brahman. That's not it. Karma Yoga is doing work without any return, not even at the mental level.
Without attachment.
Without attachment and without seeking any return. Any return. Not even at the level of mental level, where you, or the psychological level, where you do something because it feels good for you. Even that is considered a return. And Swami Vivekananda says, I would crawl on my all fours to find a person who can actually work without any return. So that he is trying to emphasize that it is so difficult to do that. So Karma Yoga is possible only when a person is completely detached, and we all know how difficult it is. So the first thing to practice to be a Karma Yogi, that means a person who does work but does not expect anything, does not even think of anything in return. So in a completely detached way. So to do that, we have to first emphasize or first remind ourselves all the time, every moment, about the unreality of what we see, about the temporary nature of what we see. So whatever is created will get destroyed. Whatever is born will die. Like that, we have so many scientific and also so many Vedic and so many traditional lessons which we can learn to emphasize this thought, this idea, this truth that nothing is permanent. Once we come to terms with that, because our problem is we consider everything permanent around us, even a mobile phone, which we know that probably it is going to just phase out because of it becoming an obsolete model. But we are bent upon its permanence. So we are like, as though it is going to stay with me the entire life. And of course, the body. We are all so much focused on the body, and it is permanent, anti-aging and whatnot. So once we come to terms with the idea that nothing is permanent in this universe, then it will become easier for us to practice detachment. And once we start practicing detachment, then it will be easier for us to become a karma yogi. And karma yoga has been accepted. Detachment has been accepted in management circles when you talk about conflict of interest. Why does this idea of conflict of interest come? Because whenever there is interest, you will not be able to perform properly or in an unbiased way. Across the world, there are so many, means no medical ethics board or no medical council permits a doctor to treat one's known people, kith or kin. So if there is no litigation, there is no problem. But if it comes to litigation, then the doctor will be found found punishable, because that person has treated one's own relatives or one's friends. Why does that happen? Because when there is an interest in what you're doing, you will end up not performing well. This is not, it has got no connection with Bhagavad Gita or any such scriptures, but across the world, medical ethics or medical councils, they don't accept this. Across the world, we have something called conflict of interest in governance. So that shows that detachment is the way to go about. If you want to perform properly, you have to be detached. And if you are detached, you will not bother about the outcome of what you are doing.
Beautifully said, Swamiji. And I'm sure our listeners will remember and try to follow the same ethics and practices in their life. And if we can get little bit influenced by this podcast today, I'm sure our life will become more smoother and more happier, and we'll really start living a divine life. In fact, I'm actually getting more immersed and more like into a state of trance while I listen to your spiritual talk. But as every good thing comes to an end, so today's podcast, we have to just leave here with the permission of Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji, for sharing your timeless insights with us today. It is clear that Vedanta offers profound wisdom for leaders, guiding them just in their professional lives, but in their journey towards self-realization and service to the others. And any final thoughts for our listeners today, Swamiji?
I think we are living in times when our mobile phone is more knowledgeable than the entire cumulative knowledge of humankind. So today, if we need to have one quality which will come above all qualities we can ever possess, I think it is humility, understanding our place in the universe, that we are not even a speck. And only when we understand that we become great. By knowing that we are not something great, we are not God or not even close, we are just a very small link or very small part, which is not essential in this universe. When we understand that, then truly we become great. So to become great, we have to become humble, and we have to understand our true nature in the bigger scheme of things.
Beautifully explained. And I think this metaphors which you have given, it is definitely going to be so well remembered by our audience. And I'm looking forward to have you in our next upcoming podcast. Of course, if you can just shed some more light into this wonderful topic of Vedanta. And we'll be looking forward to get inspired, and we will definitely learn so many new things from you. Thank you, Swamiji, and bless us so that we can continue this journey of spreading this love, positivity, and good feelings among people. Thank you, Swamiji. Here I will sign off. Thank you. Namaste.